Welcome back to Africa. On our 6-week trip from Cape Town to the equator, our last stop was Mount Kenya. After we hiked Mount Kenya, we would go back to Nairobi and I would fly home. Now, Mount Kenya is the second tallest mountain in Africa. The first is Mount Kilimanjaro. But many people consider Mount Kenya to be an actually harder expedition because it's 3 days up and 2 days down. But as you can see, it's very rocky at the top, and there's oftentimes lots of weather problems. We started in Nairobi, and we went to this place called a tools camp shop where we rented heavy coats and all the gear. And then we went to a store and we bought all the food we thought we would need. And then we took the bus. There's 3 separate towns. You choose your town to go up. There's 3 separate paths to the top. And so we chose our town and we were walking down the street. And as we're walking down the street, hoping to find a guide, this very friendly, garrulous man comes out and he says, "Oh, are you looking for a guide?" And we say, "Yeah, we are." And he brings us into the building. We start talking to him about being a guide, and we start bargaining a price with him. And we finally agree on this price, and it's not that much money because we're poor college kids, just graduated from college. And, so we agree on a price. And then he says, "Oh, okay. So now how many cooks would you like to have?" And we were like, no, we don't need any cooks. The price we agreed on, that's what we want to pay. That's what we got for this trip. And he says, "Oh, you're going to want cooks because it's 3 days up and 2 days down. And as you get to the top, we're going to want hot food. You're going to be very tired with a low oxygen. You're going to want, good food for somebody to cook for you." And we said, no. We already bought all of our food in Nairobi. And he says, "Do you have a stove?" And we said, no, we don't need a stove. We'll just eat dry food the whole time. It's no problem. And he shakes and says, "Oh, you're going to want hot food. You're going to want hot tea." He says, "Oh, okay, well, how many porters do you want to carry your bags?" And we said, no, we don't need any porters. We're young, we're strong, we got this. We'll just carry them ourselves. And he says, "Oh, you start to get to the top and the oxygen level drops. You're going to be very tired. You're going to want somebody to carry your bags." And this one, no, we don't need it. He says, "Okay, well, did you buy?" And he starts going through all the things to make sure we have heavy clothing and all this stuff. And he says, and do you have sunglasses?" And we said, "Oh, no." He says, "You're going to need sunglasses because if you look at the snow too long, you can get snow blindness." And we said, "Okay, we do want sunglasses." And he says, "Okay, well, now let me introduce you to your guide." And we were like, "What? We thought you were our guide. Like, we like you." And he says, no, I'm not a guide. I only arrange for the guides." And we were like, no, we want you. He says, no. Let me introduce you to your guide. And so he brought out this man. His name was Roy. And we met Roy. And Roy was a very quiet guy. We grew to love Roy, but he was very quiet. Sometimes we couldn't tell what he was thinking. But as you can see, he's a very nice man. He took us out to get those sunglasses, and you can see we got those really awesome 1980s cool man sunglasses. So on the first day that you hike, you do about 10 miles a day. And on the first day, you go through a bamboo rainforest. And you can see how beautiful this bamboo rainforest was. And as we're going, we put our bags down for a rest at one point. And Roy picked up our bags and he goes, "Oh, these are too heavy." And he's like, "These are maybe 40 kilos. And we're like, "Well, what do you mean too heavy?" He says, "When you get to the top, you'll be too tired. You can't carry these." We're like, "What should we do?" He says, "We need to make it lighter." So that night, we were in our first hut. And the first hut, as you can see there in the bottom photo, is actually made out of wood and has windows. It's the nicest hut of all of them. And it even has a fireplace. So Seth and I took all of our canned food, which is the heaviest stuff. We just cooked all of our canned food. We just ate all of it that first night. We were so stuffed. We're like so proud of ourselves making our bags lighter. So we just had this huge meal. And then the next morning, we started hiking in the dawn. You can see the mist going over the beautiful trees. And we were so proud. We're like, "Oh, Roy, feel our bags." And, he lifted them and he said, "Oh, still too heavy." And we're like, "Oh, man." So we continued our hike. And pretty quickly, you get out of the foresty part and you end up in the tree line sort of disappears. You get above the tree line and you get into this really amazing, almost like moonscape. It's so beautiful. And you can see looking down at that lake. It's so awe-inspiring. So as we were walking, Seth and I were like so excited. We're like walking fast. And Roy looks at us. He goes, "Oh, you're going too fast." And we're like, "What do you mean we're going too fast? We got this." And he said, "No, as the as the oxygen gets lower, you're going to want to go slower. And we're like, no, 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 we got this. And we kind of charged ahead. And then sure enough, a couple hours later, Seth and I are sitting on some rocks, exhausted, having a snack. And here comes Roy, slowly walking. And as he passes us, he goes, "You're walking too fast, boys." And he keeps going. And it was hilarious. So altitude is no joke. So on that second night, we were starting to get tired of dry food already. We'd just been eating dry food and dry food. And you stay in this other hut, and you'll see, we thought that, there must have been a time when Dr. Seuss went to Mount Kenya, because there's this animal up at the top called the hyrax. And Dr. Seuss wrote a book called The Lorax. And the Lorax is very cute in that book. So Seth and I were like, oh man, that's so cute. So we went up to the hyrax. We started walking close to it. And as we got closer, we went, and we're like, oh no, okay. You got to be careful around wild animals. But it was very cute from a distance. So you can just see how beautiful and awe-inspiring it is there. So after that night, you hike up and you get to the last hut before you go hike up into the top peak. And at that last hut, it's super, super cold. Now, we actually got really lucky with the weather. There was no snowstorms and everything was smooth sailing, but we were still super tired. And we were starting to get so hungry because we were craving salt because we've been sweating so much. And Roy felt so bad for us one night because we didn't have any hot food. He finally made some tea, and he saw us looking at the tea, and he gave us some tea, and he's like, oh, it's okay, you can have some, even though he's not supposed to give us any, because it's not really fair. If we don't pay for cooks, we don't bring our own stove, then it makes sense. They shouldn't just give it to us out of pity. But Roy gave us some. We were very grateful. So at the top, there's this glacier, and you can see how big this glacier is because Seth is about 6'3", and you see him down here, and I couldn't even get the whole glacier in the photo. And we were so amazed by this, but at the same time, we were just so hungry and craving salt so much, and oxygen. We want oxygen. So you all meet at this hut. All three paths meet at this hut. So there's a lot of people there with their guides and their cooks, all in this hut waiting to go up in the morning. You all hike up in the morning before dawn in the dark, the last 900 feet. And so Seth and I were just starving, and we were in this hut, and with the smells, all the cooks were making food, and the smells were just so good. I was like, oh my God, I can't hack it anymore. So I went outside, and I was sitting outside the hut. And as I was sitting there with my head in my hands, just thinking, I'm so hungry. I want salt. I'm so hungry. I hear this whoosh, splat, whoosh, splat. And I'm like, what is that? And I look over, and there's spaghetti on the rocks just steaming, because what's happened is all the hikers, you start to lose your appetite when you're at altitude, and so they're not hungry anymore. So the cooks make all this food, and then the people can't eat it, and so they just throw it out the window. And it was landing on these rocks, and I was so hungry. I was like, oh, I want to eat that, but I didn't eat it because you never know what's on those rocks. So the next morning, we're getting ready to go up, and we're so hungry. And the reason is because you get oxygen deprived. So if you look at this, you'll see that at sea level, the effective oxygen is about 20.9%. But as you go higher and higher and higher, 8,000 feet starts going down to 15%. And as you get up to 17,000 feet, which is where we were at Mount Kenya, which is 17,057 feet, the effective oxygen is 11%. And you can see that's very high, almost to extreme. And it's about half of what the oxygen level is at sea level. So you're really fighting to get oxygen. And unfortunately, it makes you a little bit cranky, because that morning, right before we were supposed to go up this last 900 feet in the dark to get to the top and take a photo at dawn, Seth and I got in an argument. And the reason we got in an argument is because we were exhausted, we were starving, and our bodies were just wearing out, and we needed oxygen. But we woke up that morning, we got through our argument, we hiked up that loose rock shale in the dark, and the payoff was a photo at dawn of the peak. So we're actually on the peak. This is a lower peak, even though it looks like it's higher. That's a lower peak behind us. And you can see this blanket of clouds and the sunrise coming up behind it. It's amazing. And we're up there for about 20 or 30 minutes, but it's so high, then you got to start going down to get to the next hut. So we're going down the next hut, and we start to go through this amazing landscape. And again, we're convinced that Dr. Seuss must have been on Mount Kenya, because you look at this tree over here, and it looks like the shape of a truffula tree, though not the color of it. And then you see these like furry plants that I just fell in love with right here. I fell in love with this plant. So it's just, you see things unlike anything you've ever seen before. It's just amazing. So that night, we were on day 5 of eating dry food, and we were just so tired of it. And that was the last piece of food that I had. It was a nougat bar, which is like a candy bar almost, very sugary. And all I wanted was salt. And I opened it, and I was like, I can't eat this. I just can't. I'm starving, but I can't eat this. And I turned to Seth and go, Seth, I can't eat it. Do you want it? And he looks at it and he goes, sure. And he takes it and eat it. So I gave him I took a photo of it. But eating dry food for 5 days is no joke. So the next morning is the last morning. We're looking forward to, just walking out, getting on a bus, getting back to Nairobi, having an amazing all-you-can-eat meal in an Indian restaurant in Nairobi. We're just thinking about this. I'm fixated on this and so excited. And the next morning, we wake up and we're just ready to walk. And I'm standing by this amazing, beautiful little creek right here. And all of a sudden, I was alone, sort of meditating on my own hunger, when all of a sudden Seth comes out of the hut, and he's scrunched over and he's got something in his jacket. And he comes walking over to me. He goes, Miko, look what I've got. And he opens up his jacket, and inside he has 2 breakfast sausage sandwiches. The toast with butter, and the sausages are just steaming, and I can see them. And I'm like, oh my God, that looks so good. I said, how did you get those? He says, I was inside, and this woman was having breakfast. Her cooks had made her breakfast, and she's already starting to lose her appetite from the altitude. And she saw me staring at her breakfast, and she said, do you want these? And I looked at her and I was like, yes. And she kind of slipped them to me under the table. So I took them, and here they are. And I'm like, oh, you're so lucky, Seth. And he goes, here, you want one? And he handed me one. And I looked and I was like, oh. And I took it, and I took one bite, and I said, thank you, Seth. Oh, and it was the most amazing, hot, buttery, salty, just delicious bite of all time. It was amazing. And I just looked at Seth and I said, Seth, I love you, man. You're so amazing. Thank you for being such a great friend. Because he didn't have to bring those out. He could have just walked around the other corner, and he could have eaten both of them himself. And he says, man, well, yeah, of course I'm going to give you one. We're in this together. And so I just want you to know, Seth and I are still friends. His family lives in my neighborhood, and our families know each other. And when you choose friends who you know are going to be unselfish. This is our last photo, the end. We hiked down, and there was us with Roy. We took a last photo. We got on that bus. We went back to Nairobi, and we'd been very healthy and lucky, and we had a amazing Indian food buffet in Nairobi. And then the next day, I got on a plane and came home. Now, I very much intend to go back to Africa. It changes you, it changes who you are. And I hope that you have an opportunity to go to Africa someday. Thank you for listening.